Next.
Hey, it smells so good in here.
Yep, that'd be the coffee.
I know. It's just I've had nasal polyps for so long. Now I'm on this medicine and my congestion and breathing are much better.
Dupixent, dupilumab, is an add-on prescription maintenance treatment for uncontrolled chronic rhinosinusitis with nasal polyps in adults and children 12 years and up. It can help shrink your nasal polyps so you can breathe better with less congestion.
I'm pretty jazzed about it. Plus, I don't want another surgery, and now I might not need one.
So, what can I get you?
Oh, medium coffee, please.
Severe allergic reactions can occur. Get help right away for face, mouth, tongue, or throat swelling, wheezing, or trouble breathing. Tell your doctor right away if signs of inflamed blood vessels like rash, chest pain, worsening shortness of breath, tingling, or numbness in limbs. Tell your doctor of new or worsening eye problems like eye pain or vision changes, joint aches and pain, or a parasitic infection or asthma. Don't change or stop steroid, asthma, or other treatments without talking to your doctor.
Do more with less nasal polyps. Ask your doctor about Dupixent.
Learn more at Dupixent.com or call 1-844-DUPIXENT.
This Thanksgiving, Target makes hosting easy with our lowest prices of the season. Like Good and Gather premium turkey for 79 cents a pound and quality green beans for only 55 cents. Save more on hosting. Happier holidays from Target. Restrictions apply.
Hello, this is international football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the Ranks FC podcast.
Hello, Rank Squad, and welcome to Ranks FC. It's your favourite transatlantic football podcast. My name's Jack Collins, live from London, and I'll be your host today. And joining me, as ever, across the water, Mr. Dean Jones. How you doing, mate?
Hello, mate. Yeah, very good, mate. I've seen that it's snowing over there. I've seen that it's pouring down with rain. I've seen people saying, oh, it's 1 degree when I got up this morning. 66 and sunny in San Diego, so I'm doing fine, mate.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying winter is coming for a long time. The Game of Thrones references are back out. I'm getting all those Ramsay Bolton shouts as usual, but we are where we are at this point. And I say, as ever, across the water, Mr. Dean Jones joins us. But I'm also delighted to say that we're joined by a very special guest today. TikTok sensation and self-professed English bloke stuck in an American body. Also, a fellow man who was there when Fulham beat Brentford 2-1 at the Cottage a couple of weeks ago. Delighted to say, for an introduction to Ranks FC, please welcome Mr. Eli Quivey. How you doing, Eli?
Yeah, doing well. Thanks for having me on, guys. Yeah, no complaint. I'm in sunny San Antonio where it's about 75 degrees. So, yeah, no complaints at all.
Oh dear, Jack. The thing is, Jack doesn't actually like hot weather, so he's quite happy being.
He was saying it off air, which is, I mean, fair enough. I'm the same way. I'd rather be cold than hot. So
would you? Oh, I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not.
This is why Dean's moved to San Diego. I have to call it San London at this point because there's sands everywhere apart from me on the podcast. So we'll go with it for now.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, I mean, that sums up, you are an English bloke stuck in an American body at that point. I think we've got very different outlooks on where we were supposed to end up in life. But so maybe we have got some good conversation to have here. Look, I think just to set up for everyone, Eli is somebody that's just been cropping up on my TikTok feed for a good few months now. And I was watching him build up towards his recent English trip, which we're going to talk about. And then watched it play out on TikTok. And then he was back and we were talking about like upcoming episodes. And I saw in one of his comments that someone was like, you should have a podcast. And I was like, no, you should come on our podcast, actually. He is the perfect guest. We've got like half our audiences in the US, half our audiences in England/Europe. And then we've obviously got people scattered around the rest of the world too. But like the reason that people like Ranks is because of the cross culture. What's it like to go and experience new things? Anywhere you go and watch football is completely different. And like to watch it play out in real time on Eli's TikTok was great. So Eli, I mean, just give us a little intro to yourself. I mean, and shout out your TikTok handle too, so that people can follow you and explain why you ended up making the trip that you made and tell us how it went.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on, first and foremost, and thank you for watching my journey unfold like a lot of people surprisingly did on the app. If you don't follow me, just type in Eli Quivey, eQuivey10. Pretty much back from when I was a kid, I was just obsessed with football as a young kid. My dad played. He's from France originally. He didn't force it on me, but when I was about 4, I got into the game. I was an athlete growing up in Indiana, which is in like the North Midwest of the States, where it is like London. It is gloomy all the time, rainy, just crap weather. And then I remember my dad introducing me to Wayne Rooney, and the rest is history. It just took off. Then I fell in love with David Beckham, fell in love with the Premier League, Barclays Premier League at the time. And then it just went on and on and on. And then high school, I was getting recruited. My coach manager was English, so he influenced me even more. And then it just kind of grew. And then when I was out of school, I was like, damn, I'm going to start making TikToks, not having to do anything with this trip. I made a TikTok about Manchester United. It blew up. And I was like, wow, people kind of like me over in England. Started just making more and more and more, and just built up. I'm 25. I don't have a ton of money. And I saved up for about a year and a half, pulled the trigger, went over to England, and had the trip of a lifetime about 2 weeks ago. So yeah, that's where it kind of started, man. It's been crazy.
It has been crazy actually watching you. I don't know when you would have first cropped up on my feed, but yeah, it was always like you would kind of be like sat in your car or something, and you'd just be like,
before work.
Yeah, I just being like, like I wish I was in Manchester today. I'm just talking about what you should be doing in life, and it's like you're kind of bringing it all to reality. It feels like.
Yeah. So the main video that really went crazy is I was before work. This is, I think now like 10 months ago. I made a TikTok just how I was feeling of the day. It was raining outside and I was like, this sucks. I'm in America. Like I should be watching the Premier League this weekend. I'm stuck here. I have no one to talk football about besides my dad. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Like I just need to be there. And like the next day, it just went crazy. Like I could not get back to any comments. And I think why people like my journey is like, I don't edit any of my posts. I just talk about football and how I want to be there. And then it came to reality, like you said, couple weeks ago, and it was surreal. I'm still trying to comprehend what I did still.
Yeah, it's funny how TikTok's working like this. Like people are now literally just picking up their phones, start talking about a subject, and like it's just taking off if the audience kind of feels it. And like the amount of comments that you've had on some of your posts is insane, and it just goes to show like how much people love this crossover. And what you're like, you get as many English comments as you do American comments from people like welcoming you to England as much as like wishing you all the best.
Yes, if you want to know a good stat, to look this up. 95% of my following base is from the UK.
This is a real crossover. You're like the anti-ranks. We set up obviously off the back of Bleacher Report, and our main audience has always been in America, right? So it's coming across, and look, this is why it felt like a perfect match to have you on today, Eli, because those things and that crossover and that kind of transatlantic element of it all, I think is really important, especially considering what's coming up with the 2026 World Cup. But in terms of the way that everything seems like it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller, there's this kind of feel that everything is getting into a world where we can all kind of sit there and discuss these things. And that stigma around it has potentially gone a little bit. I mean, I want to hear exactly what you did on this trip, because Dean and I have obviously watched all these videos, but obviously not everybody listening to this has. So can you walk us through what happened, where you went, what you saw, all of those bits?
Sure, yeah. So if you've seen the movie Green Street, I'm literally Elijah from it. For reference, to put something in your mind. But basically, around that 10-month mark ago, when I made that video, I made another video. I play FIFA every day after work. And I was like, hey, I'm playing pro clubs. I need some pro club team members. DM me if you want to play. So I got a couple DMs from a couple guys. One guy actually was living in San Antonio where I live. We got connected in person and started playing. And the other guy was from South London. Shout out to Terrell. We were playing pro clubs. And about 6 months ago, I was on literally like this, chatting shit, playing FIFA. And he was like, dude, when are you going to come over? And I was like, man, I don't know. He's like, just buy it right now. So I bought it and then just started prepping. So about 6 months of prep, what are we going to do? What week should I come? I changed my trip twice. The first flight I booked, it was international break. And I was like, there's no way I'm going over there on international break.
No.
So then he actually did some digging. He was like, oh, bro, like we can go to these matches. It'll be great. He's really well connected in the football industry. And he was like, I can get us tickets to go here. And I was like, honestly, it sounds great. Mind you, my background is Manchester United supporter at the end of the day. So a lot of people were like, I want to give you tickets for your first match. Like, I will do it. And I was like, no one's going to give me tickets to go. Like, there's just no way. So I make a TikTok. I'm like, hey, I'm counting down my days. So I'm coming. I mean, hundreds, thousands of messages, literally of my DMs of, I want to get your first ticket to United, this, that, the third. And I was like, honestly, thank you so much. I already got one sorted for the PAOK game of Europa League. and I had tickets for the Leicester game on the weekend. They moved it because of the Europa League midweek, so I couldn't go because I was flying out. So I was devastated. Basically, I was like, okay, I have 11 days I can go. My PTO with work, that'll be the best time I can go. So, what should we do? And I was like, my bucket list is see a match at Old Trafford. My other bucket list, literally 1 and 2, is see a Champions League match. And my third one is just go to a different club and watch a match. So Terrell was like, okay, we're staying in Fulham. Let's go to a Fulham match. I'm like, I'm so down. American ties there with a bunch of Americans that have played there. We have Jedi right now. I love how he plays. I was like, I'm so down. He was like, it's the West London Derby. They're playing Brentford. And I was like, cool. I have Embuemo in my Premier League fantasy team. It's perfect. I could see him tear it up. So I was like, okay, I'll fly in. Saturday, we'll hang out, go to London, see what Central London's saying, do some shopping because I'm into fashion a little bit as well. And then Sunday, do nothing. We were planning on going to the Camden Market. And then I got a call on Saturday night before we were going out. And I've already had a couple pints in me. And a guy named James rings me. Another backstory. 2 years ago, I had a TikTok that had about 10,000 followers. Same kind of thing. I was talking about going, but I never went. Got taken down. NBC Sports. I don't like you guys anymore. They took it down for copyright infringement. Don't like NBC Sports anymore. But basically, he got connected with me about 2 years ago. He called. I haven't talked to this guy in 2 years. He calls me when I'm getting off the tube in Central London. He's like, "The fuck you doing in London?" And I'm like, "Bro, first of all, hi. Like, what's up?" And he was like, "Bro, why are you not in Manny?" And I'm like, "I'll be in Manny the end of my trip." And he's like, "No. Who are you with?" And I was like, "I'm with Terrell." And he was like, "I'll get you 2 tickets if you come up tomorrow for the Chelsea match." And I'm like, "No way." So we go out, have a long night out in London. You guys know. And then we wake up. Terrell has his work van, Fiat van. We drive up to Manchester.
No way.
Mind you, this is like the greatest, biggest, like most proud day of my life. I'm like, I'm going to Old Trafford. This is nuts. Yeah. So we get there in the van. Yeah, we get up there. I think I blacked out the whole day. Like sitting in the Stretford End, seeing a pitch for the first time, seeing just like the grandstand and the outside of Old Trafford for the first time, going to United Road, learning the chants. We were up there all day. Experienced the Premier League match, got to see Goodside and Chelsea play us at home. And yeah, it was just like a dream come true. I mean, yeah, it was just unbelievable. That was the first day. Then that was Sunday. Then Monday, I was very, very excited for the Fulham match. Obviously, Craven Cottage is just a historic ground. I've always known that. Monday, we pretty much just drank all day. And then we took a Lime bike over to a Fulham pub, which I don't remember the name now.
Golden Lion?
I think that was it, yeah. Yeah, we were there. I had my first Asahi. It's my favorite beer that I had over there. So we were there, went to the match. I'm not even saying this because you guys are Fulham fans. It was the best overall experience I had at a match in England. Just Fulham fans are great. They were very talkative to me. We were next to the Brentford fans, so when Fulham ended up winning 2-1 because of Harry Wilson, the shithousery was absolutely phenomenal. It was great. And then Tuesday, drove up straight to Liverpool, checked into our Airbnb, went to Bayern Leverkusen versus Liverpool Champions League.
Whoa.
Mad run this.
This is great.
People were saying that I speed ran through the UK.
I like it.
So went to the Champions League match, hearing the Champions League anthem. We partied with the Leverkusen fans after. German people are great. And then spent the next day in Liverpool again. And then back up to Manchester on Thursday. Went to PAOK versus United, and then flew home Sunday. And then Friday night, I went to Warehouse Project in Manchester.
Oh, amazing. This is a real speed run. You've done it all.
I pretty much did everything. That's the story, but left out a lot of details, but that was the bulk of it. I call it a football holiday is what I did.
Yeah, you literally have. I mean, that is unbelievable run. And hopefully, I think there'll be people that are listening right now and are getting motivated to do exactly that. I mean, the amount of people that get in touch with me and Jack, whether on here or on our Patreon, and are just like, look, I'm finally doing it. I'm doing a Euro trip. Like, I want to do a game in London. I'll do a game in up north. Maybe a smaller game too, but also like, how do we get tickets to a game in Europe? Can we go to Madrid? Like every single week, someone somewhere will message me. And it is often people from America that are looking to make that jump to kind of understand the culture. And that's what we're going to get into today. So in the main ranking, we're going to get Eli to run through his favorite cultural learnings of life in the UK as a football fan from his whiz through the country. And then on the back end of the episode, I'm going to kind of flip the script and we're going to do it from the opposite point of view of someone who has left the country and what I might be missing by making that switch. So we'll go to a break and then afterwards get stuck into it with Eli.
Next.
Hey, it smells so good in here.
Yep, that'd be the coffee.
I know. It's just I've had nasal polyps for so long. Now I'm on this medicine and my congestion and breathing are much better.
Dupixent, dupilumab, is an add-on prescription maintenance treatment for uncontrolled chronic rhinosinusitis with nasal polyps in adults and children 12 years and up. It can help shrink your nasal polyps so you can breathe better with less congestion.
I'm pretty jazzed about it. Plus, I don't want another surgery, and now I might not need one.
So, what can I get you?
Oh, medium coffee, please.
Severe allergic reactions can occur. Get help right away for face, mouth, tongue, or throat swelling, wheezing, or trouble breathing. Tell your doctor right away if signs of inflamed blood vessels like rash, chest pain, worsening shortness of breath, tingling, or numbness in limbs. Tell your doctor of new or worsening eye problems like eye pain or vision changes, joint aches and pain, or a parasitic infection or asthma. Don't change or stop steroid, asthma, or other treatments without talking to your doctor.
Do more with less nasal polyps. Ask your doctor about Dupixent.
Learn more at Dupixent.com or call 1-844-DUPIXENT.
Welcome back to Ranks FC, where it's time for our main ranking. And I'm really excited to give Eli the floor here. We're going to be ranking the best things about English football culture. So, Eli, over to you.
5th place. I'm going to put this at 5 just because, like, I feel like it's pretty basic, but it's just so class. Like, I wish I could go do it every day, is linking up with your mates and going to a pub pre-match.
It's a good starting place.
Yeah, it's just phenomenal. You know, you go in, everyone's buzzing, chants are being chanted. You go get, depending where you're at, if you're in London, an overpriced pint. If you're in up north, good price pint. Get a pint or two, and then you figure out when you're going to walk there. Number 4 is going to be walking to the ground. Now, as an American, we have stadiums here, right? But there's no aura to them. Walking and seeing the floodlights at night is like, for me, it just gave me like, I was like a little kid. It was just like unreal.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those things that kind of goes by. And you did a video about this, right? About just walking as a general thing. And I've kind of had this discussion with Dean on here before about various things. And I was talking about it in a different context. And that when I went to Dubai, the thing I found hardest was not walking. And actually, that was the thing that I was like, I don't want to go back there. I can't walk places and see them. And I do think that whilst there is obviously places you can walk in America, I'm not suggesting those two things are the same. There is something about this, right? When the big stadiums are outside of town, mostly. There are exceptions, obviously, but you generally kind of go and I remember going to a pre-match game in the Meadowlands, at MetLife when we saw the Madrid derby when I was over in New York a few years ago with Sam. And getting there and getting home were the two most difficult things in the entire world, especially if you don't have a car, right? So this is one of those things that I think, one, is really interesting, but two, is interesting in the context of the World Cup. Now, I was at the Euros in the summer, and one of the things that Germany did really, really well, I thought, was actually that you could get in and get out of stadiums. And yes, there were travel issues. Yes, there were logistics issues with getting people around, but people just sort of milled about. And you mill about, you have drinks. And as you're saying, it's a bit like with the pubs. If you're milling around outside a stadium, there is that chanting. There is that different element of it. And you feel like you're immersed in something. And I do think that stadiums where you have to drive there, and look, there are them in England as well. You can look at Reading's Madejski or some different stadiums around the country that have kind of been moved outside. Stoke City's Bet365, for example, that are much more difficult to get to if you don't live within a city. But there is something about certain stadiums, and actually I think that Fulham's a great example of this, but so is Goodison Park in Liverpool. And there are those stadiums that kind of rise out of the houses. And I think that is part of the magic of English football, and part of the magic of the stadiums being kind of part of the communities that they originally served. Now, that community purpose might have gone, right? And we can all discuss whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Personally, it's not my favorite thing about the modern Premier League, but you look at it and you think, well, there is still something really embedded in the community when you're looking at where these stadiums are in relation to residential areas and all of the things around them that make them special. Fulham is called Fulham because the stadium is in Fulham and it's on the river there, and you can walk to it and it represents that community. And there is something quite special about that. And I don't know what you think about this, Dean, but there is kind of a sense, I think, that in meeting near a ground and being able to walk to it, you have something very different as an atmosphere created than something where you'd have to drive in to the same kind of place.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you talked about Medeski. I remember once when me and you went to an away game, watched Fulham batter Reading one day, and it was on it was a midweek, wasn't it? It was like a winter's, like Tuesday night or something. We were in Reading, and it was just like such a pain for us to get there, and like you ended up giving me a lift somewhere or something. But it was annoying, and when you're actually going around London, particularly, but any major city, it'll all be geared around like what pub we drinking in, like where we going first, and like that is such a buzz. And even if there's not the chanting going in there, it's like the vibe in that pub of like everyone excited, not even for the football yet, but just to be with their mates. Most people aren't even talking about football. That's what I love actually. Sometimes you meet up with your mates before a game, and an hour can go by sometimes if you met early enough. You haven't talked about football yet. Like you're just buzzing because you're with your mates and you're having a pint. And there is it's so hard to describe to people who either don't like football or don't like drinking what that feeling is like. And because it is so comforting and so, at the same time, you get this adrenaline and then you build towards kickoff. And then there are pubs like, for example, say you're going to Man United, like say the Bishop's Blaze, which is a bit of a tourist trap, but there's a pub just by the stadium where everyone is there to chant and it's a bit like pre-organized and stuff, but like there are fans standing on the tables that are there every single week and have been for years, and they'll get everyone chanting all the songs and stuff, and then you get going. Or there's pubs around every ground where it will just naturally happen as somebody. You have more pints. You want to sing more songs. Like that's just how we act as humans. Football humans anyway. And it's just very hard to explain, particularly to other cultures. So obviously, Eli, I'd be interested in what you think about this comparison, because in America, you have tailgating. And so instead of getting a train, going to a pub, walking to the stadium, you drive to the stadium, set up in the parking lot 3-4 hours before the game, open up your trunk, have all your beers or get your food out, and maybe someone's got a screen set up, and then you're like out there, whether it's rain or shine, cold or hot, whatever. And then that's their kind of pre-gaming. For me, like that is just, it's still fun, but it's just not the same at all, is it? But I mean, you are actually American, I'm afraid. But what how would you compare that as someone that's actually grown up in an American culture and being more about tailgating?
Yeah, it's a great comparison. And it's like the whole tailgating thing, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Because first of all, I didn't do many of it because when I was in college, I was playing. And if my schools I went to didn't have football teams, American football teams. So I never really experienced it. Obviously, I would go to a few here and there. I'm not the biggest drinker as well. But when you do go, it's just it's long. If you're not really a fan, even if you are a hardcore fan in America, you don't care if that team wins or loses. So it's oh, we're going to go drink and have good food and eat and then go in. And then if they lose, we don't care. We'll pack up and go home. It's just a weird thing. Over in England, it's okay, that these fans are for the badge. They've been for the badge for years. And this game actually matters, even though it's a Monday night in Fulham. You know what I mean? It matters. I think that's the main difference is there's a turning point in England, right? It's okay, you're right. You go to the pub, you have pints with your mates, talk about work, talk about family, whatever. And then it's there's a switch where it's all right, it's match time. We're about football for the next 2 hours. And if they lose, our week is going to be upsetting. We're going to talk about it. We're going to moan. We're going to groan about it. In America, it's okay, you're going to go tailgate at an NFL game, right? I'm telling you this right now. There are no diehard fans in America. It's just
honestly,
a thing.
I believe it. I can't say that to people here because it sounds like I'm patronizing them. But
it's true. Trust me, I'm American. I just said it.
Yeah.
And I grew up a big, not huge, an NFL. I went with my friends that had NFL tickets, and I would go to Colts games. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm first of all, I'm bored. Second of all, it's just not. No one is a diehard fan. They say they are. They're not. They're not.
Yeah, I had a strange situation. A couple of weeks ago, I was in a bar and the Chargers were playing. Obviously, Chargers used to be in San Diego, so there are a few people down here that still support them and stuff. And we're in this bar, and there was this couple of guys in particular who, during the game, like seemed pretty like into it. And there was one guy who was being quite dramatic with every play that went wrong and stuff. And they lost the game right at the death. The other team made a kick, and Chargers lost. And I was like, oh, how's he going to react? He just sat down and started eating chicken wings.
Yeah.
That was it. He ate chicken wings like nothing had happened. Like he just like walked out of the cinema. And I was like, hang on, but surely you're devastated. And I was like, I made a point. I was like, oh, you okay, mate? He goes, oh, there's always next time, man.
Do you think there's a knock-on from this, though? Do you think this is about, and I'm just speaking about American sports in general, the lack of jeopardy with promotion and relegation
100%.
means that it doesn't matter if you come last, you get the first pick, right? So like that culture changes.
Exactly. And I was explaining to people in London specifically about there's no relegation, because I work in the USL Championship, which is right underneath MLS, part-time. And I was like, yeah, the team I play for, we came almost dead last. And they're like, so like bottom three? And I'm like, no, it's not a thing. Like, they'll be fine. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, yeah, they'll be fine. And they're like, so what happens? And I had to explain the draft process. And at the end of the day, it's one of those things where like, it's the accountability. It's like, winner, if you win, great. If you lose, no one cares. And it's every sport in America. And it blows my mind to this day. I'm like, how?
Yeah. I'm going to be bringing this up at the end of the show again, so we can move on to number 3 if you like.
Yeah, let's move onwards.
Number 3 is going to be walking up and laying your eyes on the pitch. It's one of the best feelings that I had over there. It's absolutely unbelievable.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of this one. Like, yeah, I'm glad that that's what you've brought up. So explain, like, obviously the Old Trafford feeling, but how did that compare to Liverpool or Fulham?
It all did, just because, like, I'm telling you guys, I've dreamt of seeing a football ground in England, like an actual pitch, my entire life. Like, you can ask my parents from when I was a child, like, literally the only thing I wanted. I had a mural in my, I don't have it anymore, but I had a mural in my house as a kid, brought it to college, sold it. And it was a mural of Old Trafford, just the pitch, like the 360 of the pitch. Like, I've been just obsessed with seeing it, and seeing it is just like, wow, I'm actually here. Like, I watch every single Premier League match on the weekend since I was probably 14, maybe younger than that. And then being 25 and seeing that, and I'm like, dude, I've seen this on FIFA. I've seen this on the TV. Like, it was just mental. That feeling's crazy.
I mean, it's an interesting one. There's an old video, a promotional video that the Fulham released 10 years ago or something. So I'm going deep into the archives here. But this was kind of discussed in the video, and like one of the lines in it was just like, we'd walk up the steps long and high and hard, and then there it was, the vast expanse of the pitch, and at the end, 2 goals, portals to our souls. And I was like, wow, this is really over the top and really dramatic and really poetic, but it spoke to me then, and I think it speaks to this, right? It's one of those things, and I think probably it ties back in to what you were saying before, like the idea of watching, when you're there and you see this pitch, the idea of watching your own net ripple when the opposition have scored, like, makes me shudder even thinking about it. The idea of an away end going absolutely ballistic and watching them celebrate is one of the most frustrating feelings in the entire world. And I think the flip of that is watching, your net ripple, and you were there at that game, the Fulham game, where the ball hit the back of the net from Harry Wilson and it kind of slow-moed into the corner. And just the absolute relief, the ecstasy, the joy of that moment, the release, all comes from that. And I think that, you're setting out basically a chessboard, right? You come up these stairs and you're like, wow, this is where it happens. And there's something so incredibly powerful about that as a scene, especially when there's no one on it, especially when that pitch is empty. You're like, wow, this is it. This is like the lines are laid. The battleground is in front of me and I'm about to see it all play out. That's an incredibly special moment, I think.
Yeah, I think also tying back to Old Trafford, the theater of dreams. But like, even with that, football to me is art. Like, these guys out there playing, it's poetic. Like you said, like, you don't know what's going to happen until the final whistle. An example, Harry Wilson at Fulham. Like, that's just how it is. And it just brings, it's amazing. I don't know how to explain it. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it really is. And it's interesting. Like, I can remember even as a journalist, like obviously like been to hundreds, thousands of matches, whatever. But I could remember being a cup final. I can't remember even. I'm trying to quickly look up here now to see if it triggers any memory of which cup final I was at. It might have been Arsenal against Chelsea in the FA Cup. But I just remember there was one game and I was standing there and it was like Wembley was pretty empty at the time. And I got there early just to set up or whatever. And I remember like looking at the pitch and you're like, you look at the goal and you're like, something amazing is going to happen today. A ball is going to hit that net and it changes people's days, maybe their lives, depending on how dramatic the moment is. Something unreal is going to happen here. Even if it's a dead game, there has to be a moment today because the game has to be decided. On this pitch, there's going to be history made. And it does sound dramatic. It is dramatic. But isn't it weird, like how much it like gets into our soul? I like how, even though you know every game you go to, the ball is probably going to hit the net at some point, the feeling never gets any worse. Like it's like this just ultimate sensation of just like elation, and just the timing of it and the meaning of it can just vary slightly depending on how crazy you go in that moment.
Yeah, 100%.
Right, what's that number 2, Eli?
Number 2 is going to be, I would put it number 1, but I'll put it number 2. So this is an interesting perspective, and I know you guys know what I'm talking about. Seat clapping. So in America, I've always watched, like, for example, it doesn't even matter what match you're watching, but like the good winger gets the ball and everyone starts to stand up where the ball's at. I think that is so cool. And then being there and seeing it happen and you just hear everyone get out of their seat. Just like it's so cool. Like that's number 2 for me.
That is actually one of the best sounds in football, when all the seats flip back as the stadium starts to stand and you just hear boom,
unreal,
boom, 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 boom. And you're right, it is like the precursor to the roar. Like a lot of the time,
that kind of moment of the gasp of breath often follows it. There's 3 stages to it. It's the seats, the gasp, the roar, right? The 3 stages of a goal. But I think this is it. Like that's a really good one, and also something I would have never thought of.
I never would have thought of that either. It just
is so natural, and one of those things that I've never even really started to consider. The kind of mass standing up is a cool moment, but I've never thought about the sound. And the sound is something quite special, actually.
Yeah, and like I experienced this in Fulham, like just bare people just grab you, like just, and then if something happens, does it happen? If not, you talk about it for a little second. It's the coolest atmosphere. But when that happens, it's just like, it's unreal. Because in American sports, people are sitting and drinking and eating nachos. Like nothing is that exciting, you know? So yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, in football, obviously, like we're bringing back a lot of standing in stadiums now. So like, but down the sides of the stadium in particular is where you tend to get that kind of noise because people are there. You don't typically get people standing up down the flanks, but so I completely can feel that sound in my soul right now. Like it's really funny that's one of the things you've described, but it's then that moment that might come, like you say, someone just grabs your shoulder or something, just as the cross comes in, or just as the striker's about to get up to head it, and you can feel someone in your back, or you can just feel like the energy starting to build, and you're like, where am I going to end up? What is this moment going to be like? It's
exactly.
sensational, man.
That's also influenced language, though, right? We talk about players who take you on the edge of your seat. You talk about players who can get you off your seats, get the crowd off their seats. This is the kind of realization of that, right? When you sign a winger who has the ability to skin a man or has the ability to, knock it past him and absolutely pace someone out, like those are the players that are signed often for the effect that they can have, as much as they have an effect on the pitch. And that obviously opens up, different avenues and lots of tactical things that we could go into if we wanted, but we probably don't need to at this point. Like there is a sense that being able to find a player who can lift a crowd, who they're excited to see coming off the bench when that moment comes. There's something quite special about that, in that often those players are signed for their effect as much as they are for what they bring on the pitch.
Yeah, Fulham coming to mind for me is probably Traore.
Dharma, right?
Yeah, 100%.
It gives everyone a lift.
Yeah, exactly. It needed too. Like there's sometimes in matches where it's just dead, and you see that guy come up to the touchline, and everyone starts getting up, about to applaud him to come on, or the guy coming off, and then he touches the ball, and it's just like, again, everyone's up, and it's just the excitement again. Yeah, that's a good point as well.
Yeah. And honestly, this is one of the things that I don't like. Obviously, in English football, you can't sit in your seat and drink beer. Like, you're not allowed. I mean, that might change at some point in the future. But as it stands right now, there's no alcohol in seats and stuff like that. And I honestly don't mind it because I think, again, you would get more of that spectator sport that you get in American sports. And it's all very
100%.
well, like, sat down. Don't get me wrong, when I go to American sports, of course I go and get a beer and I sit there with it. Like, yeah, but I'm also not about to jump at any moment and potentially throw that in the air, and it just costs me like $15, whatever.
There is a flip side to that, though, that I was obviously in Germany recently, and I went to that game that turned out to not have any moments available to throw the beer in the air because it was actually the worst game of all time ever. But having there, and you were standing, everyone was standing with those beers, and just I don't think it's necessarily that changes it. You know, I actually do take your point, and I actually think weirdly food is weirder. Like, to sit
I never
there,
do it though. Do you ever take food up to your seat?
Never. And I go a lot of the time with my friend John, who's a lovely boy, he's a big Fulham fan now, and he comes with me and my brother quite a lot. He's my brother's best mate. And every single game, without fail, he goes to get a hot dog. And it absolutely blows my mind. And we were there the other week, and actually I was sitting in Dean's old seat because my dad and my brother were in my one, so I moved across to where he normally sits, and it's a little bit more of a standing section than where me and my brother sit. We're just on the side of it. And I was like, John, we have to stand up for the whole game. He was like, that's all right. Stood there eating his hot dog instead of sitting there drinking. And it just absolutely, like, I can't comprehend it as
Worse
a
than
concept.
that, mate, is when people have a coffee or a cup of tea. You know, you've got a boiling hot drink in your hand, and at any moment we could score a goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hot chocolates. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that. There was a lot of guys in Liverpool. There was a lot of guys with like what's it called? It's
Bovril.
Yes. Yeah.
It's disgusting is what it is.
Yeah. Someone was like, you have to try it. I'm like, I'm so good on that. I don't need to try that.
You don't need that, trust me.
I don't know, man. There's a time and a place for a Bovril, but
I'm not sure any diet needs Bovril in it.
I don't think it's on the side of the pitch. I think it's in the concourses. I agree. I don't think you need, it is one of those things. I'm not necessarily sure it's the drink, but I do think that is a kind of cultural shift. It's not and yeah, this is all wrapping back in together, right? But I do think that this feeds into what you were saying earlier, Eli, in that actually the idea to me of sitting there and having something to eat is like anathema, because that's not what I'm thinking about. I'm only thinking about what is going on in the pitch in these 90 minutes. And so, to have anything else distracting me is kind of weird.
Yeah, or timing your halftime beer so that you're going to leave. What time am I going to leave to get down there, but hopefully not miss anything? And that's one of my biggest problems as a fan, is that I have missed a lot of goals just before halftime because I'm so worried about missing my halftime beer.
Yeah, that was one thing I really enjoyed. Didn't make the list, but halftime pints. I challenged myself to have 2 before, but then it's a tricky game because you're going to have to use the restroom in the second half.
100%. Yeah, it's
devastating.
Yeah.
I'm glad you've learned all this in the space of a week, mate. You've done very well.
As you said, this really was a speed run. I mean, if all of that's gone, I'm intrigued now. What is at number 1, Eli?
Number 1, it's going to be, I tied 2 things together, but chanting, learning the chants, and also limbs. So when a goal happens and the whole crowd just erupts, again, I've always dreamt of doing that. Finally learning chants at Fulham, I only learned 1. It's just come on, Fulham. So I'm hoping next time I come around, I can get another.
You're in the
down the other end.
Next time you're over, we'll bring you down the proper end. You'll be fine.
You need to go down the proper end of the stadium. Yeah.
But obviously, playing FIFA, I kind of I knew the United ones, but going to a couple of the the pubs and bars before the match and stuff, and learning those, and just being in the Stretford End both matches and just chanting and feeling like part of United was just it was awesome. And then when someone scores, it was phenomenal. Yeah, I mean, obviously, right at Liverpool there was 4 goals. I'm not celebrating for Liverpool whatsoever. So that, I mean, seeing Anfield erupt was cool. But at Old Trafford, it was we're not great right now. We're not in the best of form. It was Ahmed had a brace for us, but even then it was Europa League, so the crowd wasn't phenomenal. But when Bruno bagged the penalty against Chelsea, it was cool to see. He slid right by me, so yeah, it was cool. But that's number 1 for me.
Yeah, I mean, it is a great feeling, and it's some of the best moments of my life have been spent like falling down rows of seats where you just like have just lost control in the moment. And like, I mean, the best moment I ever had was actually watching England in the Euros final against Italy when we went 1-0 up. Like, I was with like my 5 best mates. We're in the final of the Euros. We never thought England would get to a final, let alone the fact that we would all have tickets for the game. And we were there. Crazy. And then literally we fell down 3 rows of seats. It's like a pile on, like you're just like laying on the floor, hugging each other, just screaming, can't believe you scored. Obviously the day didn't go very well from that point onwards, but we had a great 45 minutes until Italy scored their equaliser. And then there's moments, whether it's a cup final, whether it's just a big Harry Wilson type moment against Brentford. There's just all sorts of moments throughout my entire life where I can just remember certain goals for the celebrations. And again, I mean, when you talk about football culture, different countries do celebrate in different ways, and it's just not limbs a lot of the time, like it's especially when you watch Champions League, for example, and they pan to the away end when there's a goal. And in Italy, they might go crazy. And
it's not like English fans, though. There's something about it that's just like,
I don't know why we do it. I don't know why we lose control like that.
I feel like the South American rush that you often see, like the Bombonera, etc. Probably
it's the closest thing to it. Yeah, I think that England and South America are similar in that sense. Like
the South Americans, they're going to light off like fireworks in the ground.
Yeah, I don't have that inclination.
Yeah. There's just no rules down there, but yeah, it is a little similar.
It's a little bit like that in some of the areas of Eastern Europe as well, especially in the old Balkan states, like seeing a goal go in. And you saw that, I don't know if you've seen the images at the weekend from the Partizan versus Red Star Belgrade derby, where Partizan set fire to an entire block of the stadium in the middle of the game. But being there when Partizan scored against Red Star in the Belgrade derby was pretty special. That was some pretty good limbs. And been to some bizarre games all over the place in Latvia, watching Riga and all sorts of random places. And it is different. And I'm not saying it's better or worse. I just think it's interesting how different people celebrate in different ways. But I do agree. I think there is something in this. And actually, kind of to turn that point into one, that's what it's supposed to be about, right? And actually, I think, Eli, you've kind of nailed it on the head here. And I've always talked about football like this. It's about togetherness in so many ways. Yes, there are tribal aspects of it. Yes, there are some disheartening aspects of football in so many different ways. And we're not going to beat around the bush and suggest the sport is perfect. But I do think that moment of togetherness that comes in the wake of scoring an important goal, everyone rising as one. And there's a reason that, Manchester are called United, right? There is something about that. Newcastle United, it's to try and bring people together. That's where this all comes from. And ultimately, that moment of pure release that a goal brings, okay, not consolation at 4-0 down, but, that generally you tend to find those goals. And because they're quite rare in themselves, this isn't like a basketball game, for example, where it's almost impossible to celebrate every bucket in the same way because there's hundreds of them across the course of a game. Because goals are rare, they become incredibly special moments. And that feeling and that relief and that just joy that comes from them, I think is probably what makes football the most special thing in the world from where I'm standing.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same with MLS, isn't it? It's like, Eli, what do you think the response would be from a diehard MLS fan about their own culture and why it might stand up to that if they were trying to even put up a conversation for what their goal celebrations are like or what their chants are like?
I would argue with them and say, what is your culture? What is the culture of MLS? I don't know.
Well, it varies. That's the problem, isn't it? Club to club is very different.
Yeah, it's just like, first of all, the chants are just embarrassing. Like, I mean, I've been to a handful of MLS games, and it's just like, dude, you might as well not even chant. I mean, it's just so, even though I'm American, it's just so Americanized. Like, we will win. We will win. It's just like, bro, like that's not it.
Yeah.
Like
I would go to bat a little bit for MLS here. Like I would rather, and I think actually one of the things that's really hurt MLS in recent years is the kind of Eurification of some of it. Like actually the fact that it had its own culture and that it sort of people might like it, they might not. That's fine. It's kind of irrelevant because the point is that there are always people that are going to like certain aspects of something and certain aspects of others, right? Fine. But at least MLS's culture belonged to itself. Right. And I think the fact that we're now seeing the changes of team names to kind of represent their more European counterparts, the fact we're seeing more cities and at the end of things and Sportings and, CF in the case of Montreal, I do think that kind of takes away from something that made it unique. And ultimately, you want something that's going to stand on its own. Now, not everyone is going to love that. That's fine. But I think that a football culture should be able to stand on its own legs. And that, I think, is the thing that sometimes I struggle with in that actually, as it goes further away from its roots, it feels like more of it ends up being contrived because it's being imported from elsewhere rather than grown organically.
Yeah, look, I'm seeing it obviously like firsthand right now. I'm in San Diego. We've got a franchise launching in 2 months. February, they've got, the season's going to begin and they're starting a team from scratch. They have 0 fan base. They don't have a proper stadium. They're just using like the Snapdragon Stadium, which is here for other stuff. And there is I'm getting emails literally about chant practice will be on Tuesday. Come to this brewery. We'll stand outside and join a supporters group and do this and bring your flags. And I haven't been because I do find it cringe, but someone's got to try.
Yeah, someone's got to do something, right?
And like, obviously we have a big Mexican population here, so the culture has like come from there, and there's going to be a lot of drum beating, and like they are loud and they are coming up with chants, and there's going to be some stuff. But the best example that I've seen in person has been LAFC, and like the fan culture they have set up is outstanding. Like LAFC games are as good as I've seen in some European grounds. Like they've got a great stadium, great atmosphere. They absolutely nailed the whole setup of the badge, the culture, the team. Everything was there. And if you just make one misstep, then it just looks a bit cringe. So yeah, it's a tough thing to match because you're trying to compete. If you are trying to compete with somewhere like England, where the game was literally born, and these chants and this feeling and these match day experiences are going back through generations. And that's just, you talk about culture, like it literally is in people's being. Like that is what they are brought up to do from a young age.
Yeah, I realized that when I was at United, like learning the chants, I'm like, what does this mean? And it's all the way back to the Munich crash, and it's from players
like that.
Players that are, like Bobby Charlton chant still, and Cantona chant, and it's just like guys that were before my day, and it's just like the history of it is what I think makes the main difference. And then like the MLS is still relative so young, that these clubs, they don't have a whole lot. And I think another thing is like the player chants, I think is really cool for every club. And like the MLS, I don't think they're there yet with the creativity of like spinning off a song with a player to then generate a chant for them. Like that's so
it's
cool.
Hard to get it to catch on for sure. I have thought about doing it at San Diego, but I could just know that it's just going to be me on my own. And
I'll write them for you, mate. You'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine. We'll get going. 100%. Look, I think this is it. There is that history attached to it, right? It's not new. It's not being created from scratch. And that's the difference. But ultimately it takes a while to build things. They say it takes a long time to grow an old friend, right? And ultimately, I suppose that's kind of the difference between the two, in that it's just a younger culture and it's still kind of finding itself at the moment, and that's going to take time.
Yeah, and also I think another thing is American fan bases are too nice. Like over in England, like these chants are dirty and nasty, like even to the referees, like they say stuff and I'm like, are we allowed to say that? Like, is that okay to say?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, it goes to another level. Sometimes, obviously, oversteps the mark too. But it's supposed to be cheeky, like nasty but cheeky, and to just wind each other up. That's the whole point of football rivalry in England, is to wind each other up to the point that your team ends up winning and you can see the anger in their faces in the away end. That is the whole point of it, as far as I can see.
100%. All right. Well, I think we will call the main segment there. Eli, thank you so much for doing that. Stick with us because we're going to flip it on its head in part 3. And Dean is going to be talking about the things he misses most about English football culture. Don't go anywhere.
Sponsored by Novo Nordisk. Hi, I'm standing in quicksand. You can't see it, but it could be true. Having MASH can often be the same way. MASH, or metabolic dysfunction-associated steatohepatitis, is a potentially life-threatening liver disease you could have without knowing, especially if you have conditions like obesity, type 2 diabetes, or high triglycerides. You don't know if I'm in quicksand, and you won't know if you're at risk for MASH without talking to your doctor. Learn more at speakliver.com.
Welcome back to part 3 of Ranks AFC. We're flipping the script, and the floor now belongs to Mr. Dean Jones.
Yeah, so look, America is great. I do love it here. I love San Diego. But of course, there are going to be things in England that I miss. And one of the things that I'll start by talking about is the away day culture. Now, it's not like at this stage of life, like I've got 2 kids now and stuff, that I've been going to loads of away games over the past few years. But obviously, throughout my life, I have just loved away days. Like it's just so emblematic of like what English football is about. And in America, I will never get that. I just know I cannot get that. Even like to talk about San Diego.
Yeah.
They've got the first game of the season against LA Galaxy away, right? So it's about as local a trip as I could have for an away day. And people will go to that day. But I'm like, well, it's just not going to be the same, is it? And like changing my mindset to accept that is really hard. So like an away day would exist of typically say you got a northern away day with Fulham and you're getting up 6 a.m. You're making your way to your first train station. You've got to get a train, probably a tube as well, up to Euston or wherever you're going to be heading out from. And so you get up there and then you're popping into the off license there or M&S or whatever. And you're stocking up on whatever you want to drink on your train journey up there and grabbing a bite to eat as well to kind of get your stomach ready for what's coming in the day. And you find your train seat and you're with a couple of your mates, but you know that there's going to be other Fulham fans and other football fans on that train. And you're like, you could just sense the buzz. So it's like a pub, but it's like a train that you're on at 8 a.m.
It's a moving pub on wheels.
Yeah, exactly. And then it builds up and then you get to your destination a couple of hours later. You're straight out of there. And then you've already got like a place where you're all going to be heading and you're going to be meeting up with other fans in another pub. And then on the way to the ground, you'll probably grab a burger. And then you get to your away end and you're in there among 3,000 like-minded people who have travelled up for the last 3 or 4 hours to get to that stadium to support that team. And then you're in it, you're living it for those few hours. And then you're all heading home, win or lose, depending on what your mood's going to be. That is something I just will not experience in America. And I don't think it exists in any of the sports that they've got here, whereby I could even try to replicate it.
No, it's no. And everyone on my TikTok is like, you have to do an away day. You have to do an away day. The amount of comments I get, and it just sounds unreal.
I mean,
it is. And
Dean summed it up quite nicely there, but it really is that. It's just making a full day of something being a sporting event. And that's not anathema to lots of things, but there is something about going away and feeling like you're like, oh, I'm somewhere else. This is exciting. You know, you're visiting a ground you might not have visited, or you're going back somewhere you've been before. And then you're like, oh, I know where to go here. I know the pubs. I've got it off the top of my head. But also the exploration, if it's the first time, there's so much to love about that kind of travel and trip. But also it's, you know, getting to see new parts of the world and seeing different bits and bobs that you kind of don't see every day. There is something very special about that group travel where you have a couple of you and that kind of swells into more and more numbers as you get throughout the day. I remember going to Blackpool a couple of years ago with Fulham, and like that train up was good, and there was lots of people, but like you get to the pub and there's just spilling outside. There are thousands in there, and you all walk to the stadium together. And it goes back to Eli's point, right? Walking up to your own stadium is special. Walking up to someone else's stadium is like, oh, what's going to happen here? This could be
What are we going to do?
Are we going the right way? What's going on? Like, it's a very, very interesting experience, I think.
Yeah, it's a great experience when you've got a good team as well. So I think like when Fulham were like getting promoted and stuff like that, like you're turning up somewhere basically knowing you're going to win, and you're kind of like giving it the big one as you walk in. Like that's a great feeling as well. So yeah, that's at number 3 for what I'm going to miss. At number 2, I don't know how to label it exactly, but it's like a shared passion with people around you for what you're about to experience. So like, say Jack mentioned before that last week or whatever, he stood in where I stand at Fulham and had my spots. So like, when I'm at games, I just know that like the people around me get it, right? They understand exactly what we're about to go through. They know how we're going to feel when a goal goes in, when a referee makes a decision, when someone makes a tackle. The chances are that 90% of the people around me are the regulars that are always there, and that they get it. There's like this connection that is created with the people around you. Even if you've never spoken to them, you look at them so many times across a season and you'll get a nod or you'll get an occasional arm around them when we've scored a goal. And that connection, again, it's just not going to be replicated. And I've been to sporting events in America, and obviously, like if you're going to go and watch the Padres at baseball, you all support the Padres, like, but to very varying degrees. Like some people just there because they want a hot dog and they want to buy some merch and they want a day out, and they'll clap and cheer as seems appropriate.
Do you not think that's the same anywhere?
Do live and breathe. What, in football?
Well, no, but like, as in, I take your point, but equally, if you got a season ticket at San Diego, then you would be sat next to the same people week in, week out. Do you not think?
But
you
they don't
that same connection.
No, I don't think they do, and I like, given the way they would argue that they do, but I've seen, say, at Dodgers, for example, like I've been in somebody's season ticket, and I've seen. Yes, they look at people and they recognize the people around them. I'm sorry, but what I saw is not the same as what I've witnessed at football stadiums with the people, when the people are around the people that are there every single week. Football is by far the most passionate sport in the world. And that there is an emotion that is stirred within people that you can't get in NFL, in basketball, in baseball. And of course, fans of those sports will try to defend it, and I'm sure some of them can put up some good arguments. But I just know that how I feel in the Hammersmith end at Fulham is impossible to replicate.
Yeah, to your point, and I tell people the difference, I try to logically, but like the main difference between football in England to any sporting event in America, people go to sporting events in America as a social event.
Yeah.
You're going because you got a ticket from a friend. You're going because work got you a ticket. You're going because one of your favorite players from the away team is coming in. You're going because LeBron James is playing. You know, you're like going to see these things, but it's to the point of like, it doesn't matter if they lose. Like you're going to go and you're going to drive home, and it is what it is. It doesn't really have an effect the next day on you. But in England, it's the difference.
I think so. Like that's how I feel about it right now. So, look, if I end up spending the rest of my life here, maybe we'll do an episode in 20 years' time, and I'm saying, oh, that episode I did 20 years ago was complete nonsense, actually. I love the Padres. I would never go to Craven Cottage ever again. We'll see. That's for another time. But the one thing that, Jack, I am missing a lot is going to Craven Cottage with Dylan. So, Eli, I've got 2 kids. Dylan's 6 and Reese is 4. And Reese has not really got into football properly yet. I do think if I was in England right now, he'd have started to come to a couple of games. But Dylan, the oldest, he had a season ticket for the 2 years before I moved out here. So he's had a season ticket since he was 4. And it's not so much just going to the game with him. It is like the memories we created across those 2 seasons of setting off in the morning together, going and getting to the train station, him getting excited to run in and grab his like bag of crisps and his like Coke or his Prime or whatever drink he's going to pick to get him through, and his little bag of sweets. He will probably pick Prime. Yeah. And then like you get the train up, and then we're like, okay, well, I'm going to meet a couple of people here, and we're just going to go for a quick beer. And you go into the pub, and like me and my mates, say I meet Biro or say I met Jack, or, some of my other mates that I've met just for a quiet pint even, and you'll get in there, you'll have a game on the TV, he'll probably take my phone off me, he'll sit down quietly and but he's buzzing in his own mind about his day out because he's a kid sat in a pub getting ready to go to a Premier League football match. And then you get from there, you jump back on the tube. He's got his scarf on. He can't wait to get into the club shop. Might treat him, might not. Who knows? Depends if he's going to be a good boy or not. But then you get into the stadium and he'll have his arm around me every game. He would stand on his seat because where I go at Fulham is everybody stands up the top. So he would stand on his seat for the whole game. He'd have his arm around me, ready just in case we scored at any moment to jump. But also just in case he couldn't see, he would want to be lifted up. And he would go mad. If we scored a goal, he was ready for those moments. I remember even in the early days, he didn't even couldn't really watch the game unfold. It's really difficult, isn't it? To watch a game in real life when you're 5 or 6 years old. But he started to learn it. And just seeing through his eyes what it is to become a football fan, to see him start to understand what emotion is in football, to see how you celebrate. It was almost like learned behavior, but it was almost like he had it in him already. And I just can't do that here. Obviously, the Premier League games, most Fulham games are 7 a.m. on a Saturday. So he's just waking up. I'll put it on TV and he will sit with me, but his brain's not working in the same way. He's not on the same wavelength with it. We're going to go to other games while we're here, but it's not going to be the same. At some point in the season, I'm sure, if we come back at the end of the season, we'll definitely get to a game. But not having the regularity of getting to the cottage. Jack, you used to see him at every home game as well. So
yeah.
seeing how he is at half time or seeing how he's excited, I'm as sad as it sounds, that's probably, apart from missing my family, the thing I'm going to miss the most about living in England.
Yeah, I can understand it, man. I get it. And I actually think that is it. It's not necessarily your lived experience because you can do, you've been there for so many years that you can kind of project that in terms of what you're watching on TV and at those hours, you can still feel that. But his kind of connection has been severed a bit in terms of where he's at and where he's with it. And I can read that, man. I get it. And I do understand it. It's a different way of viewing it. And it doesn't mean it's wrong or anything, that anything's set up with it differently. It's just a different way of experiencing it.
The way he's going to grow up watching football just isn't right. That's my biggest problem with it. If we do end up going to San Diego MLS games, it's just so different. And I can't dress it up to be anything different from what we end up seeing. So obviously, I've got this motivation to get back to the Premier League as much as I possibly can. I'm going to have to become rich somehow to be able to do this. But to have both kids growing up on Premier League football is going to be really important to me because I want them to experience that part of their Englishness as well. And they're going to start to feel more American. You can always already tell it in the way that they are coming through at school and they do start to say soccer and they're going to hear of chant practice and all the things that we've spoken about in this episode. And it's just a million miles away from how my dad brought me up watching football.
Yeah, it's a good perspective. Oh man, yeah, you gotta, we can take a group trip, meet you guys in Fulham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, mate. We're going to have to liaise together. I mean, this might become, a popular show because we're going to keep just trying to figure out how we're all getting back together in England. It's reforming.
100%. 100%. Right. With that, I think it's probably time for us to pull this episode to a close.
Oh, it's been emotional.
It has been emotional. I was going to say the first thing I want to do is say a massive, massive thank you to Mr. Eli Quivey. Eli, what a debut. That was an absolute joy.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Just exciting to talk to other guys that appreciate the culture and football as a whole, because in America, I mean, I literally talk to no one about it. So yeah, it's cool to, unless I'm playing FIFA, I get bantered, but yeah, it's been an honor. I appreciate you guys reaching out to have me on. So
oh, mate, you do talk to people. You talk to thousands of people every day on TikTok. So make sure you do go and follow Eli on TikTok. It's eQuivey10 is his handle. And yeah, he'll keep you informed on there as to his week-to-week emotions about Man United, and also you'll definitely see him planning more trips and possibly, who knows, coming back on ranks more often than you might imagine if things can go well and he can start planning. Like, I'd love to hear more of this, and I'm sure people have bought into this as the hours worn on here.
100%. This will not be your last appearance, I hope, Eli. We'll have you back on very shortly. Look, we set up a group chat for this episode. I imagine that group chat's going to be quite active as we move through the season going forward. So I'm excited to have those chats.
Lots of banter, because now I'm a soft spot for Fulham, so got to be locked in for Fulham this weekend. So we'll talk in for sure.
Absolutely, I'll send you a pic. I'll send you a picture from the cottage, boys.
Right, do it, yeah.
Thank you very much.
The hot dog in the stand.
Yeah, exactly.
Cheers, mate.
I've been Jack Collins. This has been Ranks FC. Thank you so much for tuning in as ever. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Sam and Diggy will be back on Friday. They're going to be talking about Manchester United and how Marcus Rashford fits under Ruben Amorim in this new era for the Red Devils. So make sure you're locked in on Friday to listen to that one before Amorim's first game against Ipswich on Sunday. But for now, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you very shortly. Take it easy, gang. Peace. Final seconds of the game. A chance to score, and the chance has gone begging. If your business's commerce platform keeps missing the target on golden opportunities, get the MVP you deserve. Get Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Whether you're a garage entrepreneur or IPO ready, Shopify is the only tool that you need to start, run, and grow your business without the struggle. Shopify puts you in control of every sales channel. So whether you're selling signed football boots from Shopify's in-person POS system, or you're vending vintage shirts on Shopify's all-in-one e-commerce platform, you are covered. And once you've reached your audience, Shopify has the internet's best converting checkout to help you turn them from browsers to buyers. What I love about Shopify is how, no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take control and take your business to the next level. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify is truly a global force, powering Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across over 170 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to take your business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/ranks.